Well, hello and good morning. Munson here with the Money and Finance for Expats podcast with, of course, the star of the show, Matt Penfold. How are you, Matt? How's your weekend been?
Yeah, good, Carl. Not too bad. We won't mention the football this week after
Oh,
we celebrated it last week. Not so much this week, and it's not been a good kind of past week for Portugal, Spain, and England. So yeah,
terrible, man. I mean,
yeah.
yes. I mean, the so-called beautiful game. Two games for me on Saturday, losing Portugal and England from the tournament. But you have to
Yeah.
remember, don't you? 31 teams have to lose out of 32. And you could say, reframing it in a slightly more positive way, that they did well to get to the last eight, really, didn't they?
No, I think it's they did, and you're right, and it's one-off games, and there's there's these small margins, penalties either during the game or the shootout, and you're right, only one team can win, and the rest are the so-called losers, but there's a long journey to get there anyway. So yeah, it's difficult, but yeah, we can go back to say we don't support the World Cup in Qatar. We don't like it anymore. We're not interested, as we got no more interest. So
It was
that's
never
the
gonna work. It was never gonna
exactly.
work. All right.
Yeah.
Apologies to anybody who doesn't like football, who's tuned in for money and finance insight from Matt this morning. Paul will be back with us next week, I believe. It's me and Matt this week, and taking a look at some very interesting subjects after we've had a quick look at the market headlines and what's going on in the big world of money, finance, and wealth. Doing nothing is not an option when it comes to these expat wealth matters, and don't try and play the tax system. I have a bitter experience to report myself, Matt, that I would like your counsel on, having gone up to the cash machine, the ATM in Portugal, only to find, hold on a minute, have I bought something on Amazon that has shut my account? No, I discovered to my horror some hours later that the Portuguese government, had put a block on my bank account. And I'll tell you more about
Mm,
that. They can do that in Portugal, as I suspect they can do it in Spain, and that's where the
absolutely.
focus is when we talk. Is the Iberian Peninsula, where you're helping clients as fiduciary wealth management. Find out more at fiduciarywealth.gi for Gibraltar there. So yeah, with the cold temperatures, Matt, I'm sure a lot of consumer organizations are looking forward to big profits and their best time of the year. However, a lot of people feeling the pinch at recession time, so it may not be the case. So how's it looking as we go into the deep midwinter financially and as far as people's money goes?
Yeah, I think the last week or so, the markets have been relatively flat, or although we've seen some nice kind of upwards gain in gold and silver, which we're relatively kind of bullish about in the long term. Um, But I think you're right. There's going to be a lot of kind of pressures on people's finances. We've got higher interest rates, so the cost of servicing people's borrowing, be that individuals or companies. We've got the energy bills, and that's really. I saw some figures over the weekend, and the allocation of people's budget that is taken up is incredible, and I think sometimes we focus on the individuals because there's this concern, people need to heat their homes in the winter, but you look at businesses as well, and your restaurants and pubs, and now their heating bills are double what their rent is, and the problem is people will be tightening their belt as well,
Yeah.
and we've had this interest rate increases, and you get some people coming out and say, okay, inflation's reduced slightly, or it might have peaked, and we can come out of this. But interest rate increases has a kind of lagging effect. It doesn't really, we won't see the implications of it until further down the line, and businesses will need to tighten their belt. We saw a lot of kind of tech layoffs in the US, but that may affect kind of non-tech business as well. People are going to have to consider their spending, and we're reaching the Christmas period, and of course we have that time period after Christmas as well, where we have the sales, where so much of spending happens in that period, and I don't think that will happen as much this year, and discretionary spending is really going to go down, and as we move into what is becoming a recession, the last few weeks there's been more positive outlook about the markets, and this is more related to the fact that the Fed and we always use the Feds as an example because what the US does tends to kind of follow the rest of the world. I think you said when the US sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold, which is
Yes.
a perfect expression. But they're talking about, okay, we can be less aggressive about the interest rate increases. So the markets have reacted positively, but we still have a long way to go, and yeah, spending is going to reduce a lot. There's going to be a lot of pressure on individuals and businesses with their finances, especially over the winter period. And I don't want to be Mr. Doom and Gloom as we go into a festive period.
However,
However, there could be a lot of doom and gloom. Yes, yeah. So
right.
so we have to be kind of mindful of that. Um, I mean, I saw over the weekend there been record kind of outflows from the stock market and from funds. So there is money waiting on the sidelines that people want to invest, and that will happen.
Oh, okay.
And but I think we have to be patient with the markets at the moment. They're not going to recover in the short term like people maybe think, and we may see further falls in the market before we see those gains.
And these things aren't linear, are they? I mean, when people start acting as a herd like this and as a
Hmm.
crowd, and just hearing that information, I find fascinating. So money is being pulled from the stock market, is it, and being put elsewhere? Is
Yeah.
what is the observation? So when other people hear about that, they tend to follow suit, don't they? We're not talking about a linear pattern here. We're talking about exponential changes, aren't we? Once that starts to happen, just as a rookie, and somebody who knows very little about this, as you'll discover, when I talk about my bank shutdown situation, how poorly skilled I am in this department. Where is people? I think I speak for others. Where do you think that money is going? I mean, it's not going to be better off in a savings account, or is it? Are people taking the low risk of a savings account, or is it going into precious metals? Where would you hazard a guess as to where it's going from the stock
Uh,
market?
I think we've seen some inflows into precious metals in the last couple of weeks, and
Right.
the price of silver and gold has reflected that slightly, but they've got a long way to go. But I
Okay.
think a few people are going into cash. But the problem is a retail investor, and when we talk about a retail investor, Cole, that's like you and me, the people listening to this. You're man on the street in comparison to your big, large banks and institutions who how these algorithms and their investment. The problem with the retail investor, and we spoke about this before, is the timing of the market. If you try and follow the herd, you are lagging it. So, okay, the markets have gone up, on some news. You can't time it to capture those news. Likewise,
Yeah.
if the markets react badly, you're going to be behind it. So, the biggest mistake people can make is trying to play the system in that way and try and be too clever and okay, my money's going to come out now, I'm going to put it back in then. Because the problem is people who may have gone into cash and said, okay, I go into cash, and at times, is useful having a proportion of your money in cash. But the problem is timing the markets when to
Yes.
add that money to the markets, because when we see the markets rise and we think we've got more stability, the institutions are going to be ahead of that game. So
Yes.
so you've already kind of missed out on those gains. So it's being a bit more kind of sensible with your money. On the flip side, some people look at it now and think, okay, the markets are down. Maybe it's now time to kind of add in my money to the market. I think
Mhm.
the best approach is if you've got cash and you're looking to invest, look at tranches. There's something called pound cost averaging.
Right.
So if you're investing every month, you are reducing that risk, because January the markets might be up here, February they're down there. So your average entry point is
Okay.
somewhere in the middle. So
Yes.
it is a way that you can reduce risk by using pound cost averaging.
Okay. Tranches, did you call them?
Yeah, yeah. So invest in a tranche. So tranche
Okay.
one, tranche two, tranche three.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm asking for those who don't know, like me.
The perfect host there, Cole. Ask the
Yes.
questions that people want answering.
And do you help people directly with that sort of thing, or would it be part of the portfolio management?
Yeah, we can help people do that. I mean, again, timing the market is we're not going to try and time the markets, and
Right.
depends on people's approach and their risk appetite. But you've also got to bear in mind that, Carl, we're long-term investors. We're
Yeah,
not trying to make short-term gains, and if somebody's got a large amount, if it's sitting on the sidelines, we look at kind of inflation, and that's going to lose the value of your money.
yeah,
So as long as you've got a long-term outlook, okay, don't worry about the timing too much. What we do know with markets is markets go up, markets will go down. That's a fact. But
yeah,
history tells us that over the long term, and your investment performance should be measured over long term, then the
yeah.
markets will go up as long as it's managed sensibly and in the right areas, and you're taking the right advice.
Okay, that's good. And always a key message here when talking to Matt or Paul at Fiduciary Wealth Management. These are long-term guys. This is not sort of multi-screen red braces stuff. It's not a day at the races, is it? This is long-term serious support and advice for people when you're working with them as clients. So thank you for that market update there, Matt. Any questions? Do pop them in the chat. Even if you're not listening live, always happy to pick up questions and take them to the next opportunity to talk with Matt and Paul on this, the Money and Finance podcast for expats. And I mean, this is incredible timing, quite the coincidence, really, that you're talking about doing nothing is not an option when it comes to wealth management for expats, and don't try and play the tax system. Two very interesting sentiments, and that resonates completely with me. Not that I try to play the tax system, I'm more the former. Doing nothing is not an option. And how I see it, Matt, if I may, just for a moment, is it's like a Venn diagram. And again, I might not be alone. I just might be the guy who's saying it out loud. Is that I'm not very good with money. I guess you might hear this from time to time. It's not one of my skill sets at all. Never has been. And I tend to leave things. So yeah, doing nothing, as you say, is not an option. It is the option I took, however. It's not a very good option.
Yeah.
So I've got my one circle of not being very gifted in the money management department, and then the other circle is how the state responds to that in the country in which I live, which is in Portugal. And where those overlapped last week meant that I went to the cash machine, as I said earlier on, only to be told there wasn't enough money in there, and they'd frozen my bank account. Unfortunately, when I got to the bottom of it, I was 1,400 euros worse off just before the weekend, just before Christmas, because that's what I owed them if I'd bothered to do my homework or had good advice. Now, there's some grey areas here, and I'd love your insight on this when it comes to working with accountants as well, because I think this is a real question for people, isn't it? Is getting into the local mindset of how your tax culture works in your new country. So can we start there and make a very firm point for people that their taxation affairs, their accountancy is probably not going to be like their experience of the UK or from where they're coming. They have to get with the program in the new country. Does this come up for people when you're working with them?
So much, Carl. I mean, so much.
Yeah,
One thing we forget that in the UK, if you an employee, you just have your, you receive your salary, you pay your tax from your salary, and that's it.
boom,
Okay.
done.
Yeah.
Yes.
In Spain and Portugal, doesn't matter who you are, you have to do your annual declaration. So
Yeah.
that's one thing you've got to be prepared for. But yeah, the system's so different. Your tax year runs differently. Portugal and Spain, it's a calendar year. In the UK, it's April to April. The tax. We say it every time, and it's a very common one. Someone says, "Oh, I don't need to worry about the tax. I've built up my ISAs over the years. There's no tax to pay within an ISA." Okay, great if you're in the UK, but you go to the tax authorities in Portugal and Spain and say, no, I've got an ISA. They'll probably first say, "What is an ISA?" And
Yeah.
and then they say they don't care, and it's just one of the examples, and yeah, that's why we kind of say doing nothing is not an option.
Mhm.
Maybe that statement is wrong because it is an option. You can choose to do nothing, but you will regret it further down the line. And you're right. What you say, Carl. I'm not a doctor. You'll be surprised to hear I'm not a doctor. But if I'm ill, I'm not at home there trying to chop my own leg off or say, you know what, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm just going to leave it. You go
Yeah,
to your GP, don't you?
you do.
And the same with everything. If you're trying to buy a house, you use a conveyancer or a lawyer to do that. Because if you don't do it properly, especially in somewhere like Spain and Portugal, I don't know what it's like in Portugal, but Spain, there's so many stories that people have tried to do that themselves, or used a dodgy lawyer. They buy their house, they find out 10 years down the line that the house never had planning permission, or there's some debt that, because when you buy the house, the debt comes with the house. So there's that
Yes.
debt on that
Same in
house that you
Portugal.
want
Yeah,
to
same in
pay.
Portugal. Yeah, yeah,
Madness. But people know you should use a good, some people still ignore it. You need to use a good lawyer, conveyancer. Same with your wealth management and financial advice. Even if you're not an expert, you should use a financial advisor. Even if it's just once, or once every, it depends on your situation. Some people should engage a lot more than others. But as an expat, to move into a different country where there's different rules, different taxation, different financial products, to not engage with someone who's an expert in those areas is madness. And I know I'm biased saying it, but I'm
yeah,
not saying engage with us, but they
yeah.
should. But with someone, because it's madness not to do. And we see so many examples, and yeah, people who do nothing, they will likely regret it.
There's no need to rub it in, Matt, is what I would say to that.
Yeah.
Now, this is all based on assumptions, isn't it? Now, a bit of an education we might give people jointly this morning, based on my own experience. I'm not a wealth manager. I'm here to talk with Matt and find out share with you what fiduciary wealth management do, and we talk every week on the Money and Finance for Expats podcast. But I do have some skin in the game, as it turns out, in this last week or so. And it is based on assumptions that if you're coming again, like the one you made about, if you are used to the legal system when it comes to buying a house in the UK, and you assume that it's going to be the same in Portugal or Spain, you might learn a hard and expensive lesson. And it's the same with taxation. Roughly speaking, I would say UK people are used to having an accountant who tells them what to do. Even if it is that carry a bag of receipts every year, you have a sense, don't you, in British accountancy culture, that they take care of that, and they'll tell you when to do things, what to do, how much to pay, and that they advise you in that sort of way. Now, I've worked with 4 different people in Portugal who I thought might respond in that same way as accountants. Give me the heads up at a certain time. I'm getting these little letters from what's called finanças here in Portugal on a regular basis, and that's telling me what to do. And they are like, talk about being a doctor or rocket scientist. When I've shown these to the accountants I've worked with, they don't know what it means. So these letters are coming out. I don't stand much of a chance not speaking very good Portuguese, or very basic Portuguese. And it's not only in the language of Portugal, it's in the language of finances as well. So it's like a double blow. And I'm getting these. The accountants don't necessarily know what they mean, or they say, well, just wait and see what happens. Matt, is so not the same as our expectations. Would you agree with that kind of basic assumption busting idea that I'm putting across there? It is not like the UK. Is it the same in Spain as well?
Exactly. And I think we talk about investments and taxation, and I think in the UK, for me, it's quite black and white. Here is the rules. Here's what you need to do.
Yeah.
In Spain and Portugal, there's a lot more grey. They talk about the interpretation, and it almost feels like there's hurdles that they're attempting for you to kind of trip up on.
Mm.
Here you are.
Yes.
Make the mistake. Please do, so we can do it. And I think maybe less so in Portugal, but definitely in Spain, people are scared of the tax man, because not only will they make you pay the tax, they will fine you, there'll be interest on it, and these are big, and they're aggressive. I don't know if it was on the podcast or maybe one of our webinars, we talked about a famous case, Shakira, the singer.
Oh yeah.
And she was living in Spain, but she was claiming she wasn't really a tax resident in Spain, but she had a family in Spain. She's married to, sorry for the football, PK. She had the kids there, but she was saying she was a tax resident. Presumably, it was in Colombia, where she's from. Hacienda, the tax authorities in Spain, they employed people, private investigators, whoever, who followed her around to show
What?
that, okay, this is your life in Spain. They'd follow her to, okay, you went to the hairdressers. This is your local hairdressers. You went here and there. And they were able to kind of successfully say, okay, you may not have spent 183 days in Spain, but this is where your life is. This is your center of economic and vital interest, which is the other way that you could be classed as a tax resident. And I think the court case is still ongoing, but she's going to have a very large tax bill. And that's because they so aggressively um, went after her. And I think some people think, well, that's Shakira. She's got millions. She's high profile, but they will look into people. And I think we work with mainly Brits, a lot of Brits, and post Brexit as well. There's more focus on Brits,
Yes.
and this gets to my kind of second point, which is don't try and play the tax system. And Carl, you shared your story, so I will share my story.
All
And
right.
and this is nothing
Let's
to do
go.
with me, which I can't say for the same for you, Carl. But so I moved to Spain on the 4th of January 2019. So it was a kind of perfect kind of timing because I start the calendar year 2019 as a tax resident in Spain.
Mhm.
Okay, we in the UK, because I came to Spain to work, although I work in Gibraltar, then I ended my tax residency in the UK at the same time. So 2019 was my first year of tax year. But as we know, kind of post Brexit, you need to be. I mean, you should always have been official in the country that you live in. But it's harder to be under the radar post Brexit because you need residency and visas. And we've spoke to people in the past who we won't work with, who said, no, I'm just staying in the radar. I know I spend too much time in Spain, but I don't want to pay my taxes in there. I want to pay my taxes in the UK. And Brexit, that made it harder. So back to my story. So the tax authorities, Hacienda, they wrote to my gestor, which is like the kind of mini accountants in Spain,
Okay.
and they said, okay, we want to know if you were a tax resident in Spain in 2018. You need to prove to us you weren't a tax resident in 2018. So the burden of proof is on the individual.
Yep.
And my wife is Spanish. She's scared of Hacienda, like all Spanish people are. So she kind of panicked. And I was like, well, we've done nothing wrong. So yeah, I had to go through the process of giving them letters from my current employer, my past employer in the UK,
Wow.
utility bills from the UK to prove that I was living there. I think we
Mm.
might have sent the bank statements, and it'll all be fine. But they know, and the gestor said, yeah, they're doing a phishing experiment. They're sending this out to a lot of people. They're
Oh,
targeting Brits.
yes.
And there would have been a lot of people who were probably should have been tax resident in 2018. They didn't register and pay their tax in 2018 in Spain because they didn't want to for whatever reason,
Yeah.
incorrectly. They would got this letter and say, okay, prove you weren't a tax resident in Spain in that year. They can't. So then Hacienda will, they send out this letter to say 10,000 people.
Yeah.
9,500 come back and say, I proved that 500 in the wrong. Then they won't investigate them further and further. And they might have to pay a lot of back tax,
Yes.
fines, interest. So we do speak to people, and a lot of people say, yes, I want to live in Spain. I want to live in Portugal. I want to live in Gibraltar, but I want to remain tax resident in Spain. How would they know?
Yeah.
They can
Do you mean
find
they
out.
want to remain tax resident back home in UK or in Spain? Did you say?
Some people want to remain tax resident in the UK because it's more
Yes.
familiar to them.
And they know it. Yes, that's right. But here's the
Exactly.
thing: just in the way Shakira's example there, the hips don't lie, and nor do the pictures. By the sound of it, that they took, you don't get to choose, do you? Just because
Exactly.
you can't make unilateral decisions about where you want to pay tax,
Yeah.
and who gets the last word on this? Even if you think you're right, they will always get the last word, won't they?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's yeah. The you have to prove it, and otherwise you're in trouble, and they have the power behind them. And there's two mistakes in that situation as well, Carl, because people trying to kind of play the system and pay taxes where they're not a resident, that's going to get you in trouble. But
Mm.
also you move to Spain, and especially Portugal, and especially Gibraltar, you can save lots of tax.
Right.
If you're part of NHR, the non-habitual regime in Portugal, in pretty much every case, you will pay less tax in Portugal than you would in the UK, as long as you do things properly. So
Yes.
not only people are putting themselves at risk of these large fines and back taxes, but also they're missing an opportunity. It's
Yeah.
is madness. And that's because, going back to what you said, and I get it, people are thinking, I'm not good with money, I'm not good with finance, I don't enjoy doing that side.
Yes.
Okay, that's what professionals are there for,
Yeah.
you know? And so yes, you do have to think, right, I'm going to do it and I'm going to approach it, and maybe it's that time of the year where people are thinking, right, my New Year's resolution,
Well, there you
in
go.
January is to sort
Yes.
out my finances, and okay, maybe you
And as
should start now, but
and as you say, in Portugal and Spain, it's the calendar year, isn't it? It's not April.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah,
maybe that is a good New Year's resolution, to do that. And having learnt from you in the conversations we've had, I've spoken to people in Portugal who said, "Oh yeah, I'm doing the NHR," and it's again, it's not enough to say I'm doing it, is it? Or thinking I'm going to do it. If you get
yeah,
the timing wrong, you are not doing the NHR.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. We've spoke to so many people, and we say, okay, how long have you been in Portugal for? About 3 years. Oh, so you have NHR? No, 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 not yet. It's too
Not
late.
yet.
Too
Yes.
late.
I'm
A
laughing,
couple
but
of
I mean, that
yeah,
is awful. That's an awful situation to find yourself in.
of course, yeah, of course. And again, it's because those people relocated. They didn't plan in advance, and they thought, okay, I'll do it later. I'll do it later and later, and then it's too late. And yeah, more people we spoke to and says, yeah, do you have NHR? It's one of our first questions if people are already living in Portugal.
Yes.
Do you have NHR? No, I took too long.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Are they?
guilty. Same here. Yeah, and we all we can say now to people thinking about it is yes, it's an excellent tax regime system, but it's all about timing, like so many things in life. Have the conversation, like Matt's saying, make it a New Year's resolution, perhaps one of those New Year's resolutions that you actually do. And at the end of the podcast, you'll see the details for getting in touch with the fiduciary wealth .gi. There's the website, but there's also phone numbers at the end if you want to make a priority of doing that and actually get round to it, as it were. Okay, so key takeaway then is to think in advance and plan in advance and take action, not just to think and plan, but actually to take action and have a chat with Matt and with Paul. Any other things then? I mean, today basically the key ideas have been like doing nothing is not an option, or if it is the option you take, it can be very costly
Yeah.
and anxiety provoking as well. And definitely don't try and play the tax system. It's a no. I mean, no one wins, do they, in the end? Well, there are notable examples from the celebrity world of people who try and do that. It's a very high risk strategy. It's not one that would be recommended in this environment. So don't do that. Anything else then, Matt, before we conclude
No,
today?
no. I guess just to expand on that as well, people think I think I've sorted it.
Yes.
Do have you or have you not?
Yes.
And if you think maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But
Yeah.
I think one thing that we offer as giving financial advice and wealth management to expats or even people in the UK, and something that's maybe underrated is peace of mind.
Yes.
It's and we've said before, we moved to a beautiful place like Spain or Portugal, and you go there to enjoy the lifestyle and get involved with the community and all that. And you don't want to spend your time thinking, what about the finances? Are they okay? Are they not okay? No,
Yes.
you get it sorted, and then you think, great, peace of mind. I can relax, because I have spoke to people and they really said to me, you know what, I've been up at night worried about this. And for us, it's quite satisfying to help people in that and to say, look, thank you. Yeah, I can sleep at night now, and they can relax. And but then you get those other people who are probably the worst, where they think, you know what, I'm not going to worry about it. Whatever happens, happens. Well, that
Yes.
will happen, and then you're going to worry about it because it's going to be a bit messy. So I think,
Well,
yeah,
I can say that's true. Yeah, for sure. And here's a funny thing as well. It's a kind of it's almost like the paradox of retirement or moving to a better quality of life somewhere else. Is in I think in Portugal you have peak pastel de nata, and in Spain you have peak paella, where the quality of life that you want and enjoy is there, and it's enjoyed for a few months and years, and you have more time on your hands. Now, before, when you were working, heading towards your retirement, you had an excuse not to think about these things, right? I'll get round to it. I'm busy. But
Yeah.
actually, when you have reached peak pastel de nata or peak paella, and you've got quite a lot of time on your hands, you've no longer got an excuse, really, have you, to not get round to it and make the call. And the thing you just said, I think I've done it. It's like
Yeah.
being pregnant. You can't be a little bit pregnant, can you? You either are or you aren't. And you've either dotted the I's and crossed the T's on your wealth management and taxation affairs, or you haven't.
Yeah, and to the tax authorities, ignorance is not an excuse.
So true.
Yeah,
People do
they
believe that, though. People believe that, don't they? That I
yeah,
didn't
they
know.
say
Sorry.
yeah, they might say, but people say, but I read online I can do this. Look, and you could even print it off and say, look, I read it here. They say,
Yes.
well, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
You submitted your tax returns. You didn't do this. You didn't. So do you trust a kind of faceless person online, or people, they have a face, these stupid pictures when they're making these ridiculous articles? Do you trust this, or do you want to do it properly?
Well, there you
That's
go.
it.
A possible New Year's revolution in your personal wealth management affairs. Tune in again for more insight of this kind with Fiduciary Wealth Management with Matt and with Paul. Money and Finance for Expats podcast. Thank you so much today, Matt, for that. If people want to get in touch, they will see the details on the outro clip here. So anything else to add before we go? I mean, we're speaking again next week before Christmas, I believe.
No, I think we'll have a Christmas special next
A
week,
Christmas
Carl.
special, how about that?
I'm
All right.
not sure what the special will be yet, but
Cherry and mince pies, I'm hoping, or the Spanish.
yeah, maybe a bit early for that, but we will see. But I think we're talking about a few different elements here. We like to focus on the markets and then what people should do as expats, but they do come hand in hand, and the markets will be interesting over the next few weeks and into the new year as well. And we hope we can kind of guide people through that process as well, because it is going to be a tough time for people financially. We understand that. And at every end of the financial scale as well, it's going to affect us all.
Yeah.
So I think, we're going to have a lot more information about that, and yeah, interesting times ahead.
Indeed, absolutely. Great job today. See you again next week. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thanks, Carl. Have a great week.
Bye
Sorry.
for now.
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
join us again next week. Ciao for now.